When it comes to horse racing, you can never have too much information. With twinspires, you can place your bets with confidence, whether you use handicapping insights like our Brisnet speed ratings, prime power and past performances, the guidance of our experts' top picks, or just choose a name that catches your eye. Yes! No matter how you pick your horse, bet with twinspires. And now you can share the thrill with friends using our exclusive Bet Share feature.
Welcome back to the twinspires Racing Roundtable. I'm Ashley Anderson here with James Scully and Van Sanson. Today we're going to talk the Peter Pan Stakes. We'll also look at the Preakness Stakes this coming Saturday, and we'll talk about what else caught our eye from the weekend of racing action. And James, I'll start with you today with the Peter Pan, where Antiquarian won the local Belmont Stakes prep. So what were your takeaways from that race?
Well, last seen finishing sixth in the Louisiana Derby, Antiquarian flattered the Fairgrounds prep races. Both the Risen Star Stakes and the Louisiana Derby were really strong prep races for the Kentucky Derby this year. They had real steep, strong fields. I think those horses are eligible to continue to make a major impact in stake races moving forward. And the thing with Antiquarian is that the Louisiana Derby was only his third start. He broke his maiden the second time out in mid-February for Todd Pletcher. And John Velasquez, who was on him in Louisiana Derby, talked after the Peter Pan about how he had broken through the gate and had all this trouble. So they come back in this Peter Pan, and he was in there. He was the third choice, or I think he was third choice. He was in there with the Wine Stewart, who just run second in Lexington, and Gotham winner Deterministic. And I just thought he really bounced back, stylishly in a sense. I thought it was a very encouraging performance. He sat a good trip just off the speed in third. The Wine Stewart made his move to the lead on the far turn, and Antiquarian responded when called upon, and really drove the wing moving away. And the one thing about Antiquarian is that while the Peter Pan didn't come back as the fastest race on speed ratings, I still thought it was a very encouraging performance for a lightly raced horse, a horse that's making his third or fourth start like he was. I'm not too caught up in speed ratings sometimes. As long as they're increasing, they're eligible to keep rising. He's got that profile pattern Antiquarian does. You'll see him right here on this far turn when John Velasquez calls upon him. I mean, I thought the Wine Stewart ran his race. He was 6-5 in here for good reason. He had run a really encouraging comeback effort in the Lexington Stakes for Mike Maker. And one thing about the Wine Stewart is he loves Aqueduct. He loves New York racing. He's a New York bred, and he had run some of his best races in New York. So he had a little bit of a home court edge over Antiquarian, and Antiquarian does a really good job, I think, picking him up and putting him away. So he's going to be a horse that's going to go next to the Belmont Stakes for Centennial Farms and Todd Pletcher. And, he's going to have to keep stepping things up and keep improving. But he's an intriguing type with a big upside, I think, Vance, potentially.
Yeah, I think his better behavior was the key to his victory in the Peter Pan. And as you alluded to, he broke through the gate in the Louisiana Derby where he finished sixth. And so he was reportedly calm in the paddock before the Peter Pan and calm going to post, and he rebounded really nicely in this race. I'm not quite as high on him as you are, given the fact that the speed rating came back rather modest. It was more like that of a middle-of-the-road contender that we saw in the Kentucky Derby a couple of weekends ago. He'd seemingly need a significant improvement, I think, to be in the frame in the Belmont Stakes. And given the fact that this year's Belmont is at Saratoga at a reduced distance of 1.25 miles, it's really going to attract a much more deeper cast than usual. Sierra Leone's probably going to be the post-time favorite in this Belmont. And then you also have Antiquarian's stablemate Fierceness, who he runs hot and cold, but 1.25 miles is going to suit him a lot better than 1.5 miles would. So those are two major colts Antiquarian is going to have to run against. And I'd also mention this little factoid that Todd Pletcher has won 4 Belmont Stakes before, but none of those 4 prepped in the Peter Pan. All 3 of his 4 Peter Pan winners that he's run in the Belmont have all come up short, Ashley.
I agree with you, Vance.
Three Derby horses in the filly, right, Vance?
I think so.
Yeah.
Well, I kind of agree more with Vance here. I'm not quite as high on Antiquarian in the Belmont Stakes, at least. I mean, he is 2 for 4 now for his career, but he only beat 5 rivals. I thought the Wine Steward was vulnerable here. And another takeaway for me, the Wine Steward, I feel like needs to cut back in distance, because ever since he stretched out to a route distance, he's been caught late in his last 3, and he's only gotten wins at sprint distances. I think he can handle a mile, but he keeps getting caught late at 1 1/16 of a mile or 1 1/8 of a mile. We also had Tuscan Gold end up scratching from this race and is now racing in the Preakness this weekend. So that also made the competition go down a little bit without Tuscan Gold in the field. And so I, of course, being a Sierra Leone fan, I'm going to back Sierra Leone in the Belmont if he's racing there, and give Fierceness a shot too over Antiquarian. So good to see Antiquarian improving, but I'm not sure I see him winning the Belmont Stakes. And I think of Todd Pletcher's 4 prior Peter Pan winners, I think 3 of them raced in the Belmont, and the best finish was a 3rd back in 2006. So history not exactly on the side there for Antiquarian, but Todd Pletcher also now has a record 5 Peter Pan victories. So some feather to put in his cap there, like Peter Pan.
And I will say about the speed ratings, the numbers are down this year for 3-year-olds. I know that his number was not, but it was mid-90s. Mystic Dan got a 97. You even look at these Preakness horses like Muth, he hadn't earned a triple-digit number this year. So the numbers are down this year. I think you got to keep it in perspective as what his colleagues or counterparts are doing.
Well, let's talk the second leg of the Triple Crown, the Preakness Stakes. And as we're hearing more and more every year, there's debate as to whether we should maybe move back the date of the Preakness. We're only going to have 3 Derby runners in the field this weekend. Of course, Mystic Dan, the winner of the Kentucky Derby, and also Just Steel and Catching Freedom. So, Vance, what do you think? Is it time to change up the dates? What are your thoughts on this year's Preakness field? What's your take in general with the Preakness?
Well, as you might expect, I have a lot of thoughts on this. The first is that we no longer seem to be able to breed horses that can run 2 races in 2 weeks, much less 3 races in 5. And we also don't seem to be able to produce trainers who have the skill and craft to overcome the first obstacle. So what this means is that the Triple Crown is becoming increasingly unmarketable as a series, due to a drastically reduced continuity among the 3 races in terms of its participants. And the Preakness is thus becoming increasingly unmarketable as a classic, if so few are treating it as such. Now, that's not to say that the date of the Preakness or the Belmont Stakes, for that matter, should be adjusted. Both of those races work financially from an attendance and handle perspective where they are on the calendar. They actually might do worse if one or both were moved. However, there are just too many races in this ecosystem right now, and it's evident that horsemen with the stock are preferring to target a combination of races that doesn't include the Preakness because it doesn't square with what they perceive their horse's physical abilities are, nor their inflexible training methods. And to me, the result of these actions is that the Preakness is being increasingly squeezed out of this ecosystem. The American Triple Crown seems well on its way to becoming like its British equivalent, I think. Thankfully, the dates and distances of the 2000 Guineas, the Epsom Derby, and St. Leger have not changed, but it is largely an anachronistic series, as few horses over in England are capable of running a mile, up to a mile and a half, and then a mile and 3/4. They simply don't breed horses like that anymore. And to me, we shouldn't pander to those who think we need to keep the American Triple Crown relevant by changing it. Instead, we should either just go back to producing horses and training them like we used to, or just simply accept the Triple Crown is increasingly just becoming a relic that's still there to be won if people want to try and win it, but not of great importance anymore, James.
Well, first off, I think the Preakness has always had less cachet than the Kentucky Derby and Belmont. I don't think the American Triple Crown's ever been compared to the English Triple Crown. Nobody knows it. Those races are run like all the different months. It has no correlation like the 5-week setup that we have for the Triple Crown. I think that works. I think 2 years ago we had 10 horses in 2020 2 years ago, we had 10 horses. Last year, we had 7. This year, we had 9. Obviously, getting 7 horses last year was a huge bummer. But I'm going to push back against some of these arguments surrounding the Preakness with as far as horsemen go. I think Todd Pletcher casts a huge shadow over the Triple Crown because he has 5 horses every year pointing for the Derby. He's run 64 horses in the Derby, but I think he's the exception. He is the one trainer in North America that point blank that has no interest in winning the Preakness Stakes. You can count him out. But even a guy like Chad Brown, he ran Good Magic back in the race 5 years ago or 2018. And I think most horsemen, obviously the thing with the Preakness is that Bob Baffert and Dwayne Lucas have 14 Preaknesses between them. They both say that is the easiest of the 3 Triple Crown races to win. So I don't think anything's changed in that regard. And I think a guy like Brad Cox, who is just really in his infancy, he had his first Triple Crown Kentucky Derby starter in 2021. He just started in the Triple Crown this decade. He's got potentially decades to come. If he wants to reach 18 or whatever total that Bob Baffert ends up with, he's got to win multiple runnings of the Preakness Stakes. He's going after it with Catching Freedom this year. And if you listen to his comments in recent days, he's like, hey, the Preakness still is a viable race. It's more important than other stakes. I want to win the Preakness. That's what he's saying. That's what Steve Asmussen has done. That's what Mark Cassidy has done. That's what Kenny McPeak has done. That's what Dale Romans and trainer after trainers do. Bob Baffert, all these guys, they have come back in that race in the last decade, all these trainers and many more. So I understand the shadow that Todd Pletcher is casting over the race where he won't run his horses. And we get horses every year that run in the Derby, and the overwhelming majority don't come back 2 weeks later in the Preakness. But I still think, you're going to get horses most years, multiple horses. We have 3 this year from the Derby that are back in it. I think that it still has the potential to draw a good field. There's no changing the date from a business perspective like Vance meant. And I'm not openly opining about woe begone to the Preakness Stakes. I think it's still a viable race. I think it's still a Triple Crown race. And I think we're going to still have horsemen going after it in many, many years to come, with the exception of Todd Pletcher.
With the exception of Todd Pletcher.
Yeah.
So I can see a lot of different arguments here. And I know traditionalists, of course, don't want to move the dates. To me, though, as Vance mentioned, the Triple Crown, is it going to lose its luster, become more of a relic? And having watched American Pharoah win the Triple Crown in 2015, breaking a long drought, I, before that, had not seen a Triple Crown in my lifetime. And now it's kind of becoming, are we going to see one again at all? And if we do, is it even going to mean anything? For instance, the field, as we had up there with the field that we just saw, Mystic Dan is 5-2. He was a long shot in the Derby. So if he were to win this race, I feel like his chances are much better, even though, truthfully, I didn't even think he was maybe the 5th best horse in the Derby field. For him to run back now and win the Preakness, it almost seems like it's setting up a little bit too easy for him, even though I'm totally backing Muth here and think that Tuscan Gold has a shot as well. Would love to see a Catching Freedom rally late. But it's almost like now we could see Mystic Dan win the Preakness, when I really feel like if we had a full field, more of those Derby runners, realistically, Mystic Dan maybe would be the 4th choice on the morning line. So to me, it's a little bit watered down now, say in the second leg of the Triple Crown. And then, of course, if he doesn't win the Preakness, we're probably not going to see him in the Belmont. So I would like to see more competition. And as far as people that don't like the idea of change, I totally get from a commercial standpoint, the dates make sense where they are. But to have the Triple Crown still matter in the way that it mattered when I was growing up, I feel like something's got to change. And you're looking at baseball. This is, America's pastime. They're making changes all the time now. And same with the NFL. They're adding more weeks to the season. And we're seeing the NBA make changes. So why not horse racing consider something? I feel like
I would say this would be a change to the playoff format, though, where, hey, you went from 7 games to 9 games or 5 games. The Triple Crown, the way it exists, I think the big thing with the dates is, and Vance alluded to it, they're worried about like stretching it out, making the races every month, every 4 or 5 weeks, so they lose like potentially tens of millions of dollars in handle. As far as the horses, though, with like what your point with Mystic Dan, I understand what you're saying coming in the Derby, but when I'll have another one, the Derby at double-digit odds, or War Emblem won the Derby at double-digit odds, or Funny Side at double-digit odds, or Charismatic, all those horses came back and won the Preakness, and nobody identified them, as they were thinking about him going into the Derby. Mystic Dan could come back and win the Preakness, and people will look back and he will have been the best horse was in this year's Derby. So, I mean, a little bit of like long shots winning the Derby, they do come back and win the Preakness and totally change their reputation. So whether he turns out to be, like Super Saver or Orb or some horse that doesn't run well, or he's more like, Charismatic or Funny Side or somebody like that, we'll find out on Saturday. But I'm not going to like make too many judgments about Mystic Dan until I see how he does run in the Preakness, because I've seen a lot of double-digit long shots winners from the Derby hold their form 2 weeks later, Ashley.
Well, I'm still expecting a gate-to-wire win by Muth, but we'll see. I might look back and say I shouldn't have said any of that here on the roundtable. Maybe we'll get a win with Mystic Dan.
One thing about Muth is he has a career. His high figure this year is 97. So, I mean, I think, he's the horse to beat in the Preakness. I mean, we'll get to that in a second, but it's not overwhelming on numbers.
All right, well, let's talk what else caught our eye this weekend, and I'll switch it up. I'm going to go first this time and talk about Silver Knot, who has extended his win streak to 2 for his 4-year-old season, winning the Man of War at Belmont at the Big A over the weekend. And he beat a heavily favored stablemate in Nation's Pride, who was coming off a long layoff for Charlie Appleby. And now Silver Knot has gotten the better of 2 of his stablemates in his last 2, because he also beat heavily favored Bold Act in the Elkhorn at Keeneland in April. And this time around, Silver Knot got a career best 101 Bristnet speed figure, a 121 class rating as well. And, when he came over to the U.S., he impressed on his debut in the U.S. He was beaten just a nose in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf. I think we lost signal for a second, but it's back. And then he went on this losing streak, 0 for 6 as a 3-year-old, but he was gelded ahead of his 4-year-old season. Now he's doing well, and I think he'll be respected more at the betting windows for sure going forward. And I know, James, you also were pretty high on Silver Knot heading into the weekend. We talked about it on the jury. He got the job done here, winning by more than 4 lengths, I believe, in this race. So what were your thoughts, James, on Silver Knot?
Yeah, I'm going to go back to last December. They ran this race on the first weekend of December, and, just talking about like key races. I mean, that's a race that like 2 or more horses come out of and are very, very productive. And, I thought that the best 3-year-old turf stakes last year was the Hollywood Derby, and that's proved to be the ultimate key race for the winner and third place finisher. Silver Knot that race I thought was his best effort of the year last year, running third in the Hollywood Derby. He's moved forward this season as a gelding for Charlie Appleby. 5-1 in the Elkhorn, 4-1 in this Man of War. Anybody betting that horse off of his strong effort to conclude last year has turned a profit. And, Program Trading beat him in that race, and he came back and ran a big race to win the Old Forester Turf Classic. As far as, Master of the Seas is a miler, so they're not going to be running him. But I think Program Trading and Silver Knot right now, 2 best American turf horses. And I bet them both, and I've bet all 3 races they've run in, have turned a really nice profit so far playing them. And I'm going to stay on them, because I know there's horses like I'm Very Busy and Naval Power, and there's some good horses out there still going to be able to give me some value playing. So as long as they're not racing against each other, I'm big on the Silver Knot and program trading bandwagon this year, Vance.
Yeah, I'll talk about another Godolphin horse. Unfortunately, it's a somber occasion. I want to pay tribute to a highly promising 3-year-old colt they had named Hidden Law, who we tragically lost during last week and midweek on the gallop out moments after he impressively captured the Chester Voss, which was a major trial for the Epsom Derby. After he didn't debut until like the last few days of March, and he narrowly lost his debut on the all weather. But then he switched to turf, broke his maiden at Newbury, and then he came back and won this race very impressively with a strong kick. He won both of those grass races by a combined 8.5 lengths, and as you can see here, he's widening to a 3-length victory, and unfortunately he took a terrible step moments after that, and we've lost him. So son of Dubawi and the multiple classic placed mare, Secret Gesture, he would have been a major contender in the Epsom Derby, if not the market leader, and it's just terrible that Godolphin has lost this colt, and that a misstep dashed their hopes for this race and for his potential. I mean, he had great potential moving forward too. So salute to Hidden Law.
Yeah, that was a great race. Definitely sad to hear the outcome on that one. And Vance, you're going to be covering a lot of European racing coming up, though, with the I always want to say this the wrong way, but the Curragh.
The Curragh is coming up. The Guineas, the Irish 2,000 Guineas, Irish 1,000 Guineas is coming up next weekend. And right on the back of that, we've got, and as you can see, we're going to have a best rest of the world $10 money back promotion at twinspires, covering the racing at the Curragh next weekend. And then, of course, as you mentioned, some big European races coming up after that, Derby and Oaks at Epsom, and then Royal Ascot's right around the corner. So looking forward to it.
This is going to be a busy time for Vance. Vance does some great work on those international races. I'll be betting some of his plays at Royal Ascot too, Ashley.
Yeah, I know. Your spot plays are always spot on, Vance. So I'll be looking out for that. And as you see here, we'll have that rest of the world money back offer. We also have a Preakness Stakes Day money back offer at twinspires, up to $10 back on your first win bet if your horse finishes second or third in all eligible races for the Preakness Day card, as well as the Black Eyed Susan Day card on Friday. And then we also have selected races at Churchill Downs for a money back offer. I believe that's going to be on Friday races 5 and 8, and then Saturday race 6, 7, which is the grade 3 Louisville, and race 10, and then on Sunday races 7 and 8. So check all of that out as well. And that's it for us on the roundtable. We'll be back next Tuesday, and check out our best bets and fades on the twinspires jury on Thursday. We'll see you then.